We're ready? Oh, we have another member live and in person. I'll just let Vicky get settled, then we'll start up. Hi. Oh, Judy is here. You just let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the meeting of the Right to Know Advisory Committee on Wednesday, December 15th. Thank you to all of our members and staff who have joined us in person or on Zoom, and I welcome members of the public who might be watching on our YouTube channel. I will begin with introductions. My name is Tom Harnett. Looks like I'm kind of dark here, but hopefully you can see me. I serve as the chair of the Right to Know Advisory Committee. I represent House District 83, which is the town of Farmingdale and the city of Gardner. And I am going to call on members of the committee to introduce themselves, beginning with one member who is, are you on now?
Yeah.
Who is in the AFA room with me, and I would call on Vicki Wallach to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Vicki Wallach, representing school boards and superintendents.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. I'm now going to call on people as they appear on my participant list because I have multiple screens and I struggle with doing it that way. Beginning with Christopher Parr.
I am Chris Parr. I represent law enforcement interests on the committee.
Thank you, Chris. Kevin Martin.
Kevin Martin. I represent state government interests.
Thank you. Amy Beveridge.
Hi, I'm Amy Beveridge. I represent broadcasting and media interests.
Thank you, Amy. Eric Stout.
I'm the member with background in information technology.
Thank you, Eric. Suzanne Goucher.
Excuse me, representing broadcast interests.
Thank you. Julie Finn.
Hello, I'm Julie Finn, and I represent the Maine Judicial Branch.
Jim Campbell.
Jim Campbell, representing a statewide group with an interest in access to government information.
Thank you, Jim. My co-chair on the Judiciary Committee, Senator Carney.
Thank you. I'm Ann Carney. I represent Senate District 29, South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, and a little bit of Scarborough. And I am here, as Representative Harnett said, as co-chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you. Judy Meyer.
I'm Judy Meyer. I represent Maine's newspaper publishers.
Thank you. And Justin Chenette.
Good afternoon. I'm Justin Chenette. I represent members of the public.
Thank you. And I'd also like to recognize that we are joined by Brenda Kelty, the Ombudsman on Freedom of Access issues in the Office of the Attorney General, and also Kate McBrien, the Maine State Archivist. Thank you both for being here. And last but not least, I'd like to recognize our wonderful staff from the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis. We're joined today by Peggy Reinsch, Colleen McCarthy Reed, Rachel Olson, and Anna Broom. Thank you all for all of the work that you do for us all of the time. The first item on the agenda, now that we have completed introductions, is to review and approve revised letters to the Public Access Ombudsman and Maine Municipal Association requesting data on public records requests that were completed in 2 hours or less. You may recall that we considered this item at our last meeting, but we altered the dates about when this review would commence, and it will commence on January 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2022. And we ask that the committee report, that the report back to us regarding this matter occurs by November 1st, 2022. We modified the letter based on our discussion at our last meeting. Is there anything else I need to comment on that, Peggy? You've all seen the letters. I hope they were in your packet that was distributed earlier this week. I would entertain a motion to approve those letters. Motion made by Senator Carney. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Suzanne Goucher. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from committee members? If so, if you could raise your electronic hand, because I cannot see all of you on my screen.
Chris Parr has his hand up.
Thank you, Senator Carney. Chris Parr.
Thank you. I want to make sure I heard you right. The data collection starts on the 1st of January of next year. And then I thought I heard you say it's through November 30th, but then that the report is by November 1st. Is it through October 30?
It's through September 30th, 2022.
September
I
30th.
apologize if I misspoke.
I might have misheard. So, okay.
And
Okay, great. Thanks.
There are 2 letters, one to Brenda Kelty and the other to the Maine Municipal Association. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no hands, we have a motion and a second. I would ask that the roll be called.
Sure. I'm going to do the roll for approval of the letters. The vote yes would be in favor of sending the letters as presented to you. I'm going to call the roll in our alphabetical order. We're prepared for roll calls today a little better than going around the Zoom screen. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Representative Harnett, yes. Senator Carney.
Yes.
Senator Carney, yes. Taylor Asen is absent. Amy Beveridge.
Yes.
Amy Beveridge is yes. Jonathan Bolton is absent. James Campbell.
Yes.
James Campbell votes yes. The Honorable Justin Chenette.
Yes.
Honorable Justin Chenette votes yes. Linda Clancy is absent. Linda Cohen is also absent. Julie Finn.
Yes.
Julie Finn votes yes. Suzanne Goucher.
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher votes yes. Kevin Martin.
Yes.
Kevin Martin votes yes. Judy Meyer.
Yes.
Judy Meyer votes yes. Chris Parr.
Yes.
Chris Parr votes yes. Eric Stout.
Yes.
Eric Stout votes yes. And Victoria Wallach.
Yes.
Victoria Wallach votes yes. That is 13 members present, voting unanimous. If I counted it right, 14, sorry. Did I get it? No, 13. Oh, you got 12? So, okay. So all of the members present were unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The motion passes. We move on to the next item on the agenda, reports of subcommittees, beginning with the Public Records Exceptions Subcommittee, which was chaired by Chris Parr. Christopher.
Thank you very much. I will try to be brief. We did have an exceptional meeting. Exceptional, get it? But I did roll that out before I tested it with the subcommittee and it seemed to work. So I thought I'd use it today too. So the first thing I'll mention is that we reviewed an exception that we took it out of order. Judy had raised an issue or concern rather about Title IV, Section 1806, subsection 2, paragraph E. And So we took that out of order and considered it at our last meeting. Justin Andrus, who's the executive director of the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services, attended the meeting. We had a very good discussion. I think he was great and clarified what sort of information and records are at issue or contemplated in this provision. And I'll at the end of the day, we ultimately agreed that there was really no action that needed to be taken. Mr. Andrus said that work is underway to rework statutes that apply to his organization, and that he seems he is committed to really looking at the statutes that govern the organization, and including how aspects of them that relate to transparency and ensuring that transparency is there. I will, I guess, open it up to fellow subcommittee members as well as Judy in case any comment wants to be had. Seeing none. Unless there's any questions, I'll keep going. We tabled, the next thing that we talked about was some tabled public records exceptions. There were 4 in titles 8 through 12 that we had tabled before. We took up each provision. And our recommendation to the full committee is that the committee accept the subcommittee's recommendation that no changes be made to those exceptions that were reviewed in titles 8 and 12, except with respect to reference 2020-44. And I might need help from Peggy or Colleen, but I think this is the I think this is the provision that we have been asked to repeal totally, that included a provision. That's not it? Okay, so I will rely upon you then to clarify for me what 2044 is, if you wouldn't mind, one of you.
Sure. 2044 is the one that you are recommending the amendment to clarify the responsibility of the municipality to keep the feeding and
okay.
harvesting report confidential.
Okay, that's
the
right.
one. Yep.
That's right. Okay, and we'll be talking about that. Yes, so except for that one, which we'll be talking about, our recommendation is that the full committee accept our subcommittee recommendation that no changes be made to the exceptions that we reviewed in titles 8 and 12, except for reference number 44.
Thank you, Christopher. Should we proceed with a motion to accept that? Do I have a motion to accept that recommendation from the Public Records Exception Committee? Motion made by Julie Finn, seconded by Senator Carney. Is there any discussion? Again, if there is, it really is helpful to me if people could use their electronic hands. And I am not seeing any, so I would ask we have a motion and a second. I would ask that the roll be called.
Sure. I'll call the roll for those in favor of the motion to accept no changes and those exceptions reviewed in titles 8 to 12, with the exception of reference number 2044. And I'll just call those members who are present at the meeting for the roll this time around. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Senator Carney.
Yes.
Amy Beveridge.
Yes.
Jim Campbell.
Yes.
Justin Chenette.
Yes.
Julie Finn.
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher.
Yes.
Kevin Martin.
Yes.
Judy Meyer.
Yes.
Chris Parr.
Yes.
Eric Stout.
Yes.
Vicki Wallach.
Yes.
So that's unanimous of the 12 members present at the meeting.
Thank you. And Chris, you can continue.
Okay, great. The next thing that we talked about were public records exceptions that were in our in titles 20-A and 21-A. And our recommendation of the subcommittee is that the full committee accept the subcommittee's recommendation that no changes be made to the exceptions reviewed in titles 20-A and 20-A. And that the subcommittee will plan to continue to review two reference numbers that we're basically kind of setting aside. One is reference number 52, which applies to records of the Energy Testing Laboratory of Maine. And the other is reference number 67, which protects information contained in the central voter list. So except for those two, which we would continue talking about next time we start meeting again, we recommend that the full committee accept our recommendation that no changes be made to the exceptions that were reviewed in titles 20-A and 21-A.
Thank you. And could you put that in the form of a motion, Chris?
Yes, I will make that as my motion.
Thank you. We have a motion from the Public Records Exceptions Committee. Made by Christopher Parr. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Carney. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I would ask that the roll be called.
Sure. So those, the motion is to make no changes to the exceptions reviewed in titles 20-A and 21-A, except that the the subcommittee will continue to take a look at reference numbers 52 and 67 next year. But in the meantime, those exceptions would continue without change. So those members voting in favor of the motion, Representative Harnett,
Yes.
Senator Carney,
Yes.
Amy Beveridge,
Yes.
Jim Campbell,
Yes.
Justin Chanette,
Yes.
Julie Finn,
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher,
Yes.
Kevin Martin,
Yes.
Judy Meyer,
Yes.
Chris Parr,
Yes.
Eric Stout,
Yes.
Vicki Wallach. No, and I would ask the chair permission to explain my very briefly.
Absolutely. You should turn your mic on
Yeah.
though so that you're heard.
please.
I supported all of them. Our association supported all of them except the last one when I recommend, I am Maine School Management representing school boards and superintendents. The last one had to do with what we could ask in terms of a potential client or hire in the school system and about their criminal history. And we can no longer ask on an application form about a criminal history. We're only allowed to do that when the candidate is in our meeting in person. So our concern was because of the fact that these teachers and ed techs are dealing with students every day, we felt it was important to still have the ability to talk about criminal history on the application. So all the others I support, and I understand the intent, but that is why I voted for our association voted the way they did.
Can you tell me the reference number that you're?
Can you help me? It's the last one. I think it's 10, isn't it?
I want to say 48. It's 48.
48,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you look on the pink sheets that you have, Representative Harnett, it's reference number 48.
That's 20-A MRSA section 6103 sub 3.
Yes.
Okay.
It is. Although what Ms. Wallach is also referring to, this is kind of the interplay of what's in 20A with what was recently enacted by the legislature, which is the Fair Chance Employment Act, which prohibits employers from asking either an advertisement saying you can't apply for a job if you have a criminal record, or on a job application asking for a criminal history. And that's actually a provision in Title 26. And I think Maine School Management and the schools are concerned that they won't have the ability until they've agreed somebody qualifies for one of those positions to even ask about a criminal history, at least through the application process. So it's really kind of it's not so much the 20A provision as that new language in Title 26, in the fact that the 20A provision prohibits the commissioner from sharing the information from a national criminal history search with anybody, means that the school districts do not benefit from any information that the department has that they collect in their credentialing process.
Thank you. And is the provision in Title 26, what was the ban the box
Yes.
provision? Okay. So then your vote will be no. Is that correct on the
That is
motion?
correct.
Okay.
On that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the result of the motion is a vote of 11 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. So the motion carries. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, committee members. Christopher.
Okay. The next thing we talked about was the reference number 20-44, which is the one that I mistakenly started talking about before. Basically, the committee's recommendation, which I'll make as a motion here to make it easier, and then maybe if Peggy or Colleen can put the draft amendment that I'm about to reference up on the screen so everyone can see it, that would be helpful. But the motion I'll make is that the full committee accept our recommendation to amend Title 12, Section 6072, subsection 11, which clarifies that provision, we think. And is that something that could be shared?
Did you say item 2044?
2020-44 is the reference number.
Okay, and that's on my sheet, that's 12 MRSA section 6072 sub 10.
Oh, I'm sorry. It should be sub 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
It's paragraph D of that subsection that would be amended. So my motion, I correct my motion to reference subsection 10, paragraph D. And what that does is it adds language saying that there are certain confidential records that there it is, that I think it's the Department of Marine Resources obtains, and if they provide it to a municipality, it wasn't quite clear as to whether or not the confidentiality carried with it. And so we just thought we should clarify that to say that when a report of this kind is given by the Department of Marine Resources to a municipality, that confidentiality protection extends to the municipality at that point. So that's our recommendation.
Thank you. And that recommendation, if approved by this committee, will then be sent to the Committee of Jurisdiction? Is that?
No. Usually what happens is it's included in the report, and then the Judiciary Committee would report out legislation
Okay.
that would include that, and it can either, you could have it in a separate bill that then gets referred to that committee, or you could still have it in the Judiciary Committee, and the Judiciary Committee could invite the Marine Resources Committee as well as the department to come and speak to that.
So right now, the motion then is to recommend that this go to the Judiciary Committee and the final report.
I believe so.
Right. That's right.
Thank
Okay.
you. So, and is that your motion, Chris?
That's my motion.
And do I have a second? Hold on, I'm looking. Seconded by Julie Finn. Thank you, Julie. Any discussion? I am not seeing hands. Senator Carney, am I missing anybody?
No, I think we're all set. I don't see any hands either.
Thank you. Then I would ask the roll be called.
Sure, thanks. The motion is to recommend the amendment of the Title 12 provision be included in the report to the Judiciary Committee. Representative Harnett,
Yes.
Senator Carney,
Yes.
Amy Beveridge,
Yes.
Jim Campbell,
Yes.
Justin Jeanette,
Yes.
Julie Finn,
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher,
Yes.
Kevin Martin,
Yes.
Judy Meyer,
Yes.
Chris Parr,
Yes.
Eric Stout,
Yes.
Vicky Wallach.
Yes.
That's unanimous of the 12 members present.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, committee members. Back to you, Chris.
Okay, and the last item is that we recommend that the full advisory committee endorse suggested standardized language as drafting guidance with respect to the confidentiality, the use of the term confidential that we've discussed a bit previously, I believe. And so that is my motion. And I suppose if it's possible to share that, because it's very lengthy and you wouldn't want to hear me read it.
And for committee members, is that document 3-A-4 in pink? Thank you. Is that something you can share? And I hope people's eyes are better than mine. So we're trying to read that and then scroll.
Representative Harnett?
Yes.
I did also want to just note for members of the public who may be watching that this document was circulated among committee members in advance of the meeting.
That is correct. Thank you. It was document 3-A-4.
All of the documents too as well have been posted on the advisory committee's website.
Okay. Have people had the opportunity to review the document either prior to the meeting or as it has been posted on the screen? Chris, so that we can have discussion. If there are questions, could you please make a motion?
Yes, motion is to accept that language as the guidance.
Thank you. We have a motion by Christopher Parr. Do I have a second? Seconded by Senator Carney. Are there any questions for Mr. Parr? Any discussion on the motion?
I'm not seeing any hands up, Representative.
Thank you very much, Senator Carney, nor do I. So I would ask that the roll be called.
Thank you. The motion is to accept the recommendation of the subcommittee that the advisory committee recommend the standardized language contained in the pink document 3A4. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Senator Carney.
Yes.
Amy Beveridge.
Yes.
Jim Campbell.
Yes.
Justin Jeanette.
Yes.
Julie Finn.
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher.
Yes.
Kevin Martin.
Yes.
Judy Meyer.
Yes.
Chris Parr.
Yes.
Eric Stout.
Yes.
Vicky Wallach.
Yes.
That's unanimous of the 12 members present.
Thank you, Colleen. And does that end your report, Chris?
It does, and I just want to thank the subcommittee again for all the work that we did. Excellent work, and thanks as well to OPLA staff. We could not have done it without you.
Thank you, Chris, and I echo your thanks to the committee, and I thank you very much, the subcommittee, and I thank you very much for chairing that subcommittee again. Greatly appreciate that assistance. Next item on the agenda is a report of the Remote Participation Subcommittee. That is a subcommittee that I chair. We had a lengthy meeting this morning. And the first item that I need to address is a remote meetings adoption of a policy in remote meetings. It's a proposed redraft. This, and I will turn to Peggy eventually, but I will just to summarize, this is designed to allow bodies who have not had the opportunity to establish a remote participation policy to do so remotely in the event of an emergency or an urgent matter. This was fully discussed in multiple meetings by the subcommittee. It was unanimously adopted. The recommendation was unanimous. It was a motion to refer to the full committee that was unanimously adopted. Peggy, if I'm missing anything, if you could just summarize, that would be great. Okay, then I will make a motion that the full committee adopt the amendments to the remote participation policy in section 403B of the Freedom of Access Act. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. I don't know who that was from, but
Justin.
Seconded by the Honorable Justin Chenette. Is there any discussion from committee members or questions? That would be, why don't you, if you could just share it so folks, I think we circulated it just late this morning. Is that correct? So we'll just share the part of the statute that we're recommending be amended.
And Representative Harnett, I'll scroll through to see if there are hands that, if people raise their hands with questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Carney, very much appreciated.
Not seeing any questions.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. I would ask for the roll to be called.
Oh, hold on, we have a question. Judy Meyer.
Sorry, because this is so fresh in my mind, with the Zoom bombing in Rumford this week, if a city is going to have a meeting and they put how to go to the meeting on their agenda with a link, how is that going to be policed? Or is that up to the towns to figure that out?
I think
I know it's a big question, but
I think management of meetings is up to the individual body that is holding the meeting. I don't think it's a topic addressed in this policy. I'm not exactly sure what happened in Rumford.
So they had the link to the meeting on their public agenda and it got bombed. So if we're requiring municipal or government bodies to say how the public can access the meeting, are we exposing potential bombs? I'm just throwing it out there because it just happened this week.
And I know that it happened in the beginning of the pandemic. There were certain meetings that were bombed.
Eric Stout has his hand up.
Okay, thank you, Senator Carney. Eric.
So we did, for our first meeting, we shared and posted on the Right to Know website some like a couple of pages of technical guidance for whoever's running specifically the Zoom meeting. It was specific to Zoom, how to prevent Zoom bombing. So I won't recount all of that here, but there is a link on I think it's the first meeting, maybe the staff can clarify which meeting that was, but there's a link about and it was shared with the Maine Municipal Association, I think directly, and then also posted on the Right to Know website. So if that's helpful. But the person running the meeting would really have to kind of become a little more knowledgeable or competent about what administrator controls they have for the meeting. And hopefully that's helpful. I'm not an expert in it, but I gathered that and we conveyed that and posted it.
Does that address your concern, Judy?
Judy has her hand.
Yes, it does if people know about it. This was actually a school board meeting, and I know Maine School Management is so precise about its training and sharing information. So, and still they were victimized. So I don't know if this is something that we include in the FAQ somehow, we get out in training materials, but just so that the awareness of how to manage this is really, prioritized.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Not seeing any hands.
Thank you very much, Senator Carney. I would ask that the roll be called.
The motion is to accept the revised amendment language to section 403B, subsection 2, paragraph A. Representative Harnett,
Yes.
Senator Carney,
Yes.
Amy Beveridge,
Yes.
Jim Campbell,
Yes.
Justin Chanette,
Yes.
Julie Finn,
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher,
Yes.
Kevin Martin,
Yes.
Judy Meyer,
Yes.
Chris Parr,
Yes.
Eric Stout,
Yes.
Vicki Wallach.
Yes.
That's unanimous of the members present.
Thank you very much. The next item that we discussed at the subcommittee on remote participation is one that has been discussed by this full committee as well, and that was the issue of remote participation by residents of correctional facilities, those being residents of county jails and the Maine State Prison. As you may recall, there were 2 instances of committees this year, the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety and the Judiciary Committee, that had bills that could very much affect the lives of the residents of those facilities. There was an attempt to allow residents of those facilities to participate to provide online Zoom oral testimony. That was not something that was able to be accomplished. It was a concern that I had about allowing full access to government by citizens of our state who are entitled to participate, but are restricted from doing so because of their status of incarceration. This committee heard from Michael Kebeda from the ACLU on this issue, and today, let me back up, we also heard from advocates for survivors, particularly survivors of violent crimes and or sexual assault, and also from victims' families about the re-traumatization that this might cause. And we tried to expand our knowledge by asking representatives of the department, the Maine Department of Corrections and the Maine Sheriff's Association to address this issue. Today, we heard from Dr. Ryan Thornell, who is the Deputy Commissioner of the Maine Department of Corrections. And Dr. Thornell said that the department understands the concern, but he outlined some of the challenges that this would present to the Department of Corrections. Some of those challenges are, right now, they have a limited amount of space for participation via the internet, and that space is often used for educational programs for persons that are trying to obtain their high school diploma, for educational programs with persons in community colleges, four-year colleges, and even some in master's programs and doctoral programs. His concern was that they have over 1,600 residents in state facilities, and that there's simply a logistical problem of, if you make space available for all of those persons to participate in the legislative process, it means that those educational programs, and I forgot that there are also therapeutic programs that are run in these state facilities, and also job training and other vocational training. He's also raised concerns that the Victim Support Services Department of the Maine Department of Corrections is already pretty overwhelmed, and they would want the ability to contact survivors and victims' families to let them know if incarcerated individuals would be testifying, and they are not certain that they have the staff to do that. He pointed out that the community confinement program, which has recently been expanded, is already putting pressure on this staff that notifies victims and victims' families, and that they simply do not know if they have the staff. They also don't know if they have the technological ability to allow all persons who might want to be interested to participate in this manner. However, the doctor also pointed out that he is solution-oriented. He understands the concerns of the subcommittee and of some members of the full committee, and promised to work with us if we continue to study this issue through a working group or a study group formed by the Judiciary Committee. We also heard from the Maine Sheriff's Association representative, Sheriff Dale Lancaster, who is president of the association. And he pointed out some very similar concerns, but also mentioned that state inmates and residents of county facilities are very different. The county facilities, the county jails house people for a much shorter tenure, typically 6 to 9 months, and generally not more than that. And that there are many persons who are there in pretrial status. He said there are 15 different county jails, and their facilities differ drastically from jail to jail, and that many of the same challenges outlined by Dr. Thornell would face those facilities, and even in a more exacerbated way. He mentioned that they have GED programs. I know they're not called GED anymore, but I forgot the term that he used. But again, he also committed to working on this issue with a broad group of stakeholders if that's the process, if that's the path that this committee takes. Before making a motion on this, because we did talk about this for probably almost an hour, hour and a half, I would open it up to other members of the subcommittee if they have anything they want to add about that discussion before I make a motion as to how I will ask this committee to proceed. So if there are members of the subcommittee who either have a different view of what we discussed or think that I've left things of importance out, I would ask that they let that be known at this time by raising their hand, and I will call on you as I see those hands, if I see those hands.
Representative Burnett?
Senator Carney?
Thank you. I don't see any other hands from members of the subcommittee, but I did want to point out, I thought this was very interesting that Dr. Thornell mentioned that that they do have public policy work groups, at least in the Maine state correctional facilities, that allow people who are incarcerated to participate in a pretty extensive way in recommendations regarding legislation and feedback on bills. I thought that was a really interesting point that I wasn't aware of before that meeting.
Thank you very much, Senator Carney. And that just reminded me that he also mentioned that legislators are free to visit with incarcerated individuals, with residents of those facilities to discuss legislative issues as well as other policy issues. My view on this, as I expressed to the subcommittee this morning, is it is now December 15th. This is the final meeting of the Right to Know Advisory Committee, and this morning was the final meeting of the subcommittee. I do not see us in a position to recommend a policy or new legislation. So the motion that was put forth to the subcommittee was to recommend to the full committee to make a motion to send this to the Judiciary Committee with the request that the Judiciary Committee establish a working study group to examine this issue and all of the issues associated with it, and that working group should be as diverse as possible in terms of the number of stakeholders, making sure that groups like the ACLU of Maine, the Maine Sheriff's Association, the Maine Department of Corrections, the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence, groups dealing with sexual assault and violence, and groups representing the families of victims. That would be an informal committee, not one created by legislation. Would not be able to be staffed by OPLA because it would be running as the legislative session was running. So what I want to make as a motion today is that the full committee recommend in our report that the Judiciary Committee set up that type of working group. Does that capture the motion that we had this morning? Colleen and Peggy, thank you. So that is my motion. I would ask for a second, and then I will open it up for discussion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank
Representative.
you, Senator Carney. Motion made by myself, seconded by Senator Carney. Is there any discussion? Christopher Parr has a hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, and as I did at the subcommittee meeting, I will be supporting this motion. I do have two questions, but that I want to ask. But before I do, I'll be supporting it with the understanding that this is a continuation of a discussion that is become actually pretty fascinating, and there's lots of moving parts, very complex issue. But my understanding is that, it is going to include a wide array of stakeholders, including the ones that Representative Harnett mentioned. And it's possible that at the end of the process, we may, the people participating may have to agree to disagree as a matter of policy and the ability just to fund and coordinate this sort of thing. So I will be supporting it. The two questions I have are, one, are members of the subcommittee that worked on this going to be able to be on this working group? And related to that, will the meetings of this committee, this working group, be public?
Thank you, Chris. It will be up to the Judiciary Committee to establish the membership of the working group. As chair of the Judiciary Committee, my recommendation would be to include members of the subcommittee if they are interested in doing so. You raised some important issues. Eric Stout in the subcommittee meeting wanted to first and foremost discuss issues of the financial implications of something like this, and maybe the need for expansion of resources, financial resources to these facilities to accommodate this type of participation. In terms of the public nature of those meetings, I will turn to our analyst, I know we have had these groups in the past. Are they typically meeting in public?
I'm not sure. I mean, if they're doing the work of the committee, then yes, but I'm not sure that they're actually doing the work of the Judiciary Committee. I don't know that there's anything that applies that would actually make them hold public meetings. I think in the past, they have, meetings like this are generally open to the public. It might be harder now with Zoom meetings all the time or Teams. But certainly you could recommend that to the judiciary.
Right. And I think I would make that part of my motion, that we recommend that those be public, recommend that to the Judiciary Committee. For many of the things that we heard this morning were that there are a lot of different interests here, and we would like it to be as full a conversation as possible. So I would amend my motion to the extent that those committee meetings be open to the public. I would ask my second, Senator Carney, if she is comfortable with that amendment.
Yes, I am. And I do have a comment once you're opening the floor again for comments.
I'm opening the floor again for comment. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you. Another thing that Christopher Parr mentioned in our subcommittee meeting this morning was kind of the broader issue of participation in legislative hearings, committee hearings. And I do think that's something that is really important for us to attend to as well. And we didn't fold that into the work of this working group, but I just wanted to assure members of this committee and members of the public who are listening that that is something that we're going to have to look into. I think that the technology changes that are being made at the State House will give us some better guidance on how to move forward on that. But I think that that's as important as the issue that this working group will be working on.
Thank you, Senator Carney, for raising that. And I believe some of those issues that Christopher Parr raised were specifically for people with disabilities, making sure that accommodations are made to enhance participation and make participation as open as possible to that population. And also the fact, I think Christopher raised, that there are many people who work during the time that the legislature is in session, that we need to look at ways to accommodate participation as broadly as possible. So,
and in addition, people have lacked the technology in their homes and also lack broadband access, which is essential as well to connecting via remote technology to legislative hearings.
Thank you. Are there additional comments from committee members or subcommittee members that want to weigh in? Not seeing any hands, I would call for the roll, please.
Sure. The motion is to recommend that the Judiciary Committee establish a working group to explore the issues related to participation by residents of correctional facilities in legislative proceedings with a diverse makeup of stakeholders and with the recommendation that meetings be conducted in public or provide public access. Representative Harnett.
Yes.
Senator Carney.
Yes.
Amy Beveridge.
Yes.
Jim Campbell.
Yes.
Justin Chenette.
Yes.
Julie Finn.
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher.
Yes.
Kevin Martin.
Yes.
Judy Meyer.
Yes.
Chris Parr.
Yes.
Eric Stout.
Yes.
Vicky Wallach.
Yes.
That's unanimous of the 12 members present.
Thank you very much. And that ends my report for the remote participation subcommittee. And I see, I'm sorry, Eric Stout has a hand up.
Yes, before we leave the subject of remote participation, I wanted to follow up on Judy's comment about Zoom bombing. And I did look up, and I put it in the chat window. I did look up that it was actually near the end of last session. A whole year's gone by. Didn't seem that long, but it did get posted on the December 4th, 2020 website for the subcommittee on remote participation. And I put in the chat window the specific link where that is, the Zoom bombing technical guidance, how to prevent that. And I don't know whether you wanted to take a minute to, get that on the screen, and so that it'd be recorded as to what the link is. And also that might help to, promote that guidance if we reposted that as part of this year's, subcommittee guidance. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that you and others were aware of that. There is a posted 2-page document on Zoom controls.
Thank you, Eric. Is it possible to post that, to share that link on the screen, Peggy? If not, Eric, as our technological expert, I'm sure can help you out.
I think it'd be a matter of just clicking on the link in the chat, and then it'll show up on your screen, and then maybe you can, Peggy or Colleen can share screen from there.
Can you copy the link and share that?
What I'm gonna do, I think, is share the. Here. Share. So this is, if you go to the Right to Know Advisory Committee's website, and then you go to prior years. Here, I'll go back. I won't show that. Yes. Okay. Right to Know Advisory Committee archive page. Go back one more. Right to Know Advisory Committee webpage. Legislature.maine.gov, Right to Know Advisory Committee, with hyphens in between those words. So if you scroll down and go to prior year's meeting information for 2020, and then this last, the most recent meeting is on top, and trying to see exactly which one.
It's called Enhancing Your Zoom. Yep.
Okay, there you go. So if you click on that, you will get this document. Oh, it won't let me do that. Okay, I can share that. Yeah. No, I can stop this, and then I can get this. Sorry. Every day is a learning experience. Okay, secure your Zoom meeting. This is what you're talking about, right, Eric? And here's participant. If you're a host, there are different things. Look at all that great information. So this is a Zoom meeting. We can also
put this in the report.
Sure.
And I interrupted you. We're going to say share it with
Well, we
the
could share it with the interested parties list, or I mean, it's, if anybody's watching the meeting right now, they can go to the website and find this, but we'll also add it to the report. We'll actually add this sheet as an appendix to the report, if that's what you want.
Thank you. Would that help, Eric, in your mind?
Well, I think it would, and I'm curious if Judy and the others think that would be helpful to kind of promote that. This is what we, offered last year.
Thank you. Okay, with that, that's the conclusion of my report, except that I would like to very much thank the members of the Remote Participation Subcommittee for their tireless work this year on these issues. We had great discussion, I thought, particularly today on the issue dealing with incarcerated persons. And we had members of this committee on that committee, but I also want to thank Brenda Kelty for her participation, and also Kate McBrien for her assistance with our process. So thank you all for your efforts. The next report is of the Technology Subcommittee, and I will turn to Chair Judy Meyer.
Thank you very much. I actually gave the gist of my report at our meeting on the 1st, and I brought back, I was asked to bring back language to on our recommendations. So this is the language of those recommendations. But really, just to quickly review, as a subcommittee, we determined that retention schedules exist, practices are in place. The failure is in people being trained, adequately trained to follow those practices and follow those retention schedules. So our focus is really on training at all levels of government. So we have 2 specific recommendations, and that is to encourage MMA and MCCA to send out annual reminders about retention schedules and available training resources. And you can see the rest of the language here. And our second recommendation is to have Brenda Kilty and Kate McBrien, with whom our committee could not have functioned without, to do training at the legislative level specific to records management. So go to specific committees during their orientation to augment the general FOA training received by legislators at the beginning of each session. So I don't know whether we need a motion, for both together or motions for each. So I will defer to you, Mr. Chair, on that.
And I will immediately defer to our analysts to determine what is the best way to proceed.
I think you can do them together unless anybody wants to split them off for any reason.
Okay, I see a hand up, but first I would ask for a motion and a second, and then we can open it up for discussion, and I'll call on Suzanne at that point. So Judy, if you want to put that into a combined motion.
Sure. I make a motion that our committee forward these recommendations to judiciary, these 2 precise recommendations on additional training and enhanced training at all levels of government as enumerated before you.
Thank you. We have a motion from Judy Meyer. Do I have a second? And someone's going to have to speak up because I don't have much of my screen left right now.
I'll second the motion.
A motion seconded by Senator Carney. Is there any discussion? Suzanne Goucher?
I don't know what NARA guidance is. Should we spell out that acronym?
We should, yes.
And it is what?
I will defer to Eric because this was his add to the recommendation when we finalized it. Mind,
Yeah,
Eric?
Yeah, and Kate is also on, but it's the National Archives and Records Administration. It's the federal equivalent of the Maine State Archives, but they publish a few guidances per year, but this was their guidance to implement the statute that was put into the U.S. Code as a specific amendment to the Federal Records Act of 1950. That's been amended, multiple times since 1950. But that's the foundational records management law in the federal government. And so the NARA followed along, and specifically in that link, if you click on that link in the active document, it'll take you to like a 3-pager that talks about that private communications that are through personal emails or messaging systems, if it's about government business, is a government record. And so it needs to get out of that private personal space and put into a government email or government document management system. And I just add that that's very timely right now in the news this week about the, private communications going around about the attack on the Capitol, and they're invoking the Federal Records Act and the presidential papers amendments to the Federal Records Act. So it's very timely, and it's also very foundational to our democracy that government business and government communications are done in a transparent way, and then this is the guidance to specifically say that within 20 days. If you have a personal message on a personal platform, you have 20 days to either copy or forward that into a government system. So the recommendation here is to take a look at that and see how to adopt or adapt that for the state of Maine.
So, thank you, Eric. So Suzanne, would spelling out the acronym and keeping the hot link in satisfy your?
Yes, yes, yes. We all know how the feds love their acronyms.
Everybody does.
But I think we should say National Archives and Records Administration,
Okay,
just to make it very clear what we're referring to.
thank you. That's doable. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I had a question, Representative Harnett, that has to
Yes.
do with the, in our discussion, the fact that the NARA guidance was hyperlinked was mentioned. When the report to the Judiciary Committee, the final report is placed on the website, will it have live links, Peggy?
I believe it will. I think
Great.
that's the way that we're trying to produce these things. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Senator Carney. Additional discussion? Suzanne, your hand's still up, but I assume that's just a latent hand?
Yeah, I'll take it down. Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't see any other hands, Tom.
I'm sorry?
I don't see any other hands up.
Thank you, Senator Carney. Then I would ask for the roll to be called.
Sure. So the motion is to accept the recommendations of the Technology Subcommittee as shown in the document you just reviewed. Representative Harnett,
Yes.
Senator Carney,
Yes.
Amy Beveridge. Stepped out, looks like. Jim Campbell,
Yes.
Justin Chanette. Looks like
He said
Justin.
he had to leave.
Oh, so he also has stepped out. Julie Finn,
Yes.
Suzanne Goucher,
Yes.
Kevin Martin,
Yes.
Judy Meyer,
Yes.
Chris Parr,
Yes.
Eric Stout,
Yes,
Vicky Wallach.
Yes.
So that vote is of the 10 members present and voting, it was unanimous.
Thank you. And Judy, does that conclude your report?
It does. And once again, thanks to the staff for helping us along, and to Brenda and Kate for all their expertise. And of course, Eric, always guiding our conversation.
And thank you, Judy, for chairing that subcommittee. And I appreciate the work of all of the members of that subcommittee and thank them as well. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, which is review the draft report, which was circulated earlier this week. And I will turn to whichever analyst wants to take this on.
Sure, I'll just quickly talk about the draft report. What we did is to try to share with you through email the draft document as it stands now. We included reference to the earlier recommendation that you had adopted at your prior meeting with regard to the letters that you formally finalized today. And as well as the recommendation of the Public Records Exception Subcommittee that you accepted last time to adopt a revised matrix that could be used by the Judiciary Committee, policy committees, and the Advisory Committee's Public Records Exception Subcommittee when reviewing proposed and existing exceptions. And this really is intended to increase awareness of the archive statute that we had discussed previously that removes confidentiality protection after 75 years for records held by the state archives. So those were the previous recommendations that you had made decisions on. Obviously, we'll add today's discussion to the document and the recommendations that you made. We'll also add the reference to the Zoom guidance document that you talked about as well. Well, that's not a recommendation. We'll incorporate that into the draft report. But we really wanted to just share with you the draft as an indication of the framework that we'll follow. This is in line with prior the prior reports that we've drafted for the advisory committee. We wanted you to have an opportunity to look at that and provide any comments that you might have about how we've laid out. Particularly, you might want to take a look at how we've laid out the discussions and deliberations of each individual subcommittee. And then obviously, after we send out a new revised document after today's meeting, we'll want you to take a look at the recommendation section to make sure that we are faithfully sort of articulating your discussion today and memorializing your recommendations.
Thank you. So in the recommendation section on page, the pages are numbered, but in the executive summary, then the working study group would be incorporated into that.
Yep, so we
well.
had all the recommendations that you adopted today from each of the subcommittees would be included in both the executive summary and then also in the record. There's a separate section of the report that would address recommendations. So that's where you'll see the substantive changes, that will make some additions from today's meeting. And then if there are any changes that you would suggest to any of the, like I said, any of the discussion of the committees, subcommittees, deliberations, how we've summarized that, we'd welcome your comments. I would note also that we usually add a section of the report to sort of briefly summarize any legal cases over the past year with regard to freedom of access issues. We have sort of a placeholder in the report in the draft now. We haven't added those summaries yet, but we will to the final report. So that'd be something else for you to take a look at when we send the revised document. So it's really just sharing it with you now for purposes of your information. And then our talk about, if you'd like, about a schedule for completing your final review of the report. I don't think you anticipate having an additional meeting, but you can review the report by email. If there are any substantive issues or objections that might be raised to the language, we typically would then bring that to the chair, and then you make a determination about whether or not you need to have a meeting to make any additional substantive changes. If you're just reviewing the report for sort of grammar and style and making sure we're consistent with what your decisions are, then typically we've done that through email in the past. Your report date isn't until January 15th to the legislature, so you do have some time, recognizing that we're coming up on the holidays. So if you wanted to set a timeline that would have folks getting their comments back to us in early January, I think that would work perfectly fine for us.
Thank you. So in terms of steps moving forward, we do not need a vote today. And, I know I've had a chance to go through this. I'm not sure everybody has. It's a pretty lengthy document. It's very well done. I appreciate the work. So your question to me is to set a date as to when do you anticipate a final draft going out?
We haven't really talked about it amongst ourselves, but I would anticipate we would attempt to get a draft out to you at the end of this week or the beginning, before the holiday, at the end of the next week, so that you would have some time to look at it. Does that make sense?
And to make your workload manageable, when would you
Okay.
want the comments to be back to you?
I think in early January, sometime at the end of that first week in January, maybe perhaps something like that.
January 7th.
January 7th, which is the Friday. I think that would work with our timeline. We certainly could, as long as the advisory committee has completed its work by the 15th, we have often interpreted that statutory deadline with some flexibility. The report doesn't have to be finalized and printed necessarily on the 15th and transmitted to the Judiciary Committee. But if the committee itself has completed all of its work by that date, so you do have some flexibility, but January 7th, I think would work.
Okay,
well.
so if we get, if everyone gets comments back to you by January 7th, at that point, we can determine if we need another meeting, if there are substantive changes. All Are those dates agreeable to committee members, or are there any questions about the process moving forward? I am not seeing hands. Senator Carney, am I missing anything?
I don't see any hands either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much to our staff. We will look forward to the final. I would encourage people to read this draft as thoroughly as possible and then review the final draft so we can get all of our comments back by January 7th. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is, are there any other issues that committee members would like to raise before I open the meeting up for public comment? Christopher Parr.
No issues. I just want to really thank Brenda and Kate for making themselves available and attending these meetings. And I didn't know if either of them had anything that they wanted to comment on. So I wanted to extend an invitation to both of them.
Invitation extended. Brenda, Kate, if there's anything you would like to add. If not, please accept our thanks. I noted that you, Brenda, were on every subcommittee, as was Chris Parr, Eric Stout, really carrying a lot of load here. So Brenda, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Representative Harnett. Thank you, Chris Parr, for the invitation. I just want to say thank you to everyone who devotes all their spare time to working on these issues. It's a lot of meetings, and it's really wide ranging in terms of how all these topics touch this basic, government transparency and open government. We've covered a lot of material, and I just want to thank you for the hard work. And I I'm really looking forward to being able to talk to the legislative committees. Because it's really a great way to get the message out there, and I think a great reinforcement of the general training that they get. So I thought that was a wonderful idea, and I'm really looking forward to it. And any excuse really to keep working with Kate McBrien, I'll take it, even if it's more meetings. So thank you very much.
Be careful what you wish for, Brenda. We can schedule more meetings. Thank you. And Kate, I see you have your hand up as well.
I do. I just wanted to say thank you so much for including me and for inviting the State Archives to be a part of all of this. I think we can play a really helpful role, and I hope that you continue to rely on us. And if we can help in any way, all of the staff here is really eager to be a part of this. So I have found the meetings fascinating, actually. So thank you for including me.
And thank you. The input of the archivist has been very helpful to us, and it's really a part of the process we had not looked at enough in the past. So thank you very much for that. Vicky.
Thank you. And I'm the newbie, so excuse me for raising these topics and not knowing where essentially to put them. But I did talk to my folks in terms of issues they were facing, and maybe it could inform things we look at in the next round. And it's over FOIA requests. As you know, I represent school boards and superintendents, and there are FOIA requests. There are two things happening. FOIA requests are coming out of Texas, which is kind of really unusual, where they want so-called directory information on staff, which includes what they teach, where they work, their date of hire. They also requested their email addresses. Most of the superintendents who have received these requests are in York and Cumberland County, and a few in Down East Maine, but it's an overwhelming request, essentially. And then the second one is in-state requests went to Biddeford, York, and Hampton school districts asking for a list of every textbook being used in the districts and all the books in the library. Our understanding is this is part of the No Left Turn group. It's a national group, but also has folks concerned in Maine, and we understand. But one district in Penobscot County had 24 FOIA requests in early November. So I raise it just because I don't know if it's just the time we're living in, or if it will stop happening over time when we get back to quote unquote normal. But there's an urgency in the districts in terms of how much time this could take. And I know we had that discussion last session or last meeting, but I just wanted you to be aware of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I would encourage, to the extent possible, are they allowed to work with you, Brenda, on these issues, or is that simply for the state?
No, this is, in my bailiwick, and I certainly do deal with agencies that are getting swamped with FOIAs and how best to manage that. So yes, send it my way if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising that. Okay, anything else before I'm up? I see other hands up. I see Suzanne Goucher.
Just briefly going back to the issue of training for legislative committees, it occurs to me that members of legislative leadership don't serve on committees. So at least in the early going, it might be worthwhile to do some trainings for the Legislative Council. Just throwing a suggestion out there.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin Martin.
Yeah, just a brief reaction to some of those school district FOIAs. To me, a lot of those border on asking the schools to create new records. I think that's something you can work with Brenda, but I know from a state agency perspective, that would be an immediate flag for us in terms of they're asking us to create new records that don't exist. Certain contexts, I think there could be directory information, but like creating a list of books in the library, for instance, unless that exists, or unless there's something similar to that, that would be responsive. I think that's, when we're getting into those, I think FOIA is designed to handle those type of difficult requests in a way that's actually a little more friendly to state agencies and schools and such.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It is important to remember that FOIA does not require anyone to create something new. It requires turning over what already exists that meets a request. Thank you for that. Christopher.
Yeah, just to kind of echo what Kevin just said, the first question that I always ask when we get a FOIA is that, do we have anything? Does this thing exist? If something doesn't exist, there's no obligation, to create that. But even if there is a record, or there are records where all these different types of information might reside, the good thing about our FOIA law is that it's about reasonableness, and reasonableness is proportional to the breadth of a request in my mind. So, we will provide the records, but it's going to take a while, and it might take months, if not conceivably over a year, in some cases, depending on the breadth of a given request. So that's why the flexibility in our law, I think, is so important. Just like a one-page document that can be provided within a day or two should be provided in a day or two, because it's unreasonable to think that it would take any longer. But this sort of thing kind of goes to this larger issue that we kind of touched upon during our meetings, which is, the question of distinctions between requests made for, commercial or private interests versus in the public interest. And, requests that are being made from individuals from out of state, and not individuals who are within Maine, who have the FOIA as a way to try to understand what the government is up to in Maine. So it's a very complex issue. I'm going to actually study the Illinois law that we were sent at one point, because I think that is a very sophisticated law that has some good approaches. But I totally understand what you're saying, Vicki, as far as how overwhelming and potentially the amount of work that can be involved with these. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Christopher. Eric.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that the requester gets 2 free hours now. And say the good faith estimate is 10 hours of work to pull together what they're looking for. So that's 8 chargeable hours times 25, that's $200. So in the response, our good faith estimate is 10 hours. You get the first 2 free, times 8 is $200. If you're willing to pay, we'll proceed. And in my observation, a lot of times they're not willing to pay, and then the work doesn't have to be done. So maybe Brenda can verify what I just said, but just because it's going to be a lot of work, they first have to agree to pay for it before that work proceeds.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm going to look, I do not see any other hands up at this point. Am I missing anything, Senator?
No, I don't see any either, Tom.
Thank you. The next portion of our agenda is an open period for public comment. In my list of attendees right now, I am not seeing any members of the public, but I will wait to see if I am wrong.
I know that you had somebody sign up and join the meeting, and he has since left.
Right. I noticed that he was here earlier, so, okay. Before entertaining a motion to adjourn, I want to repeat some of the things that I said to my subcommittee members on the remote participation subcommittee. I want you all to know, all committee members, and as well as honorary committee members, Brenda Kelty and Kate McBrien, that it has been an honor and a privilege to work with you on these difficult issues. I serve, as do a lot of legislators, on a lot of committees, and I don't say this to all of the hardest working committee that I've been associated with. Every member goes above and beyond, not just in our full committee meetings, but in participating in doing the heavy lifting on our 3 subcommittees. We are very fortunate to have everyone on this committee in the state of Maine. You add a great deal to our state and to transparency. And I thank you very much for all that you do. And we have to thank our OPLA staff who talk about doing the heavy lifting. We could not do this work without them. And I want to recognize Peggy Reinsch, who I see all the time because she staffs judiciary, Colleen Reed McCarthy, who has done amazing work, also Rachel Olson and Anna Broom. Thank you very much for all that you do. Not only do I appreciate it, but the people of Maine do, and if they don't, they should, because you are helping us make sure that we have an open government. So thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, and happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Motion by Christopher Parr. Do I have a second?
Second, and thanks to you, Chairman, and Senator Carney as well.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. We do not need a roll call on this one. All those in favor, if you could just raise your hands. Again, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. I hope everyone has had or will have a happy holiday season, and look forward to the final report and seeing you again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.